does this mean for employees, right? Jeff touched on the power imbalance, right? And what we've been seeing over the last, say 6 to 10 months in terms of what employees have now in terms of choice, right? What candidates have in terms of choice. The Great Resignation is not just about, it's not about people losing jobs, right? It's about people leaving jobs and in search of something else. And so, as we kind of look at how all of these trends are impacting companies and hiring leaders, it's also interesting just to take a little bit of a lens on how is it impacting employees, right? And what does it mean for employees? So Jeff, maybe you could start off here and anyone else who wants to jump in.
So right now you have this acute labor shortage, which means the power balance is very shifted in certain industries, and certain job functions. That won't last. It's a question of how long it's going to persist, but it will stop at some point. So one of the things I find super interesting, just to build actually on another point that Kierty made, was one of the things that we identify in the book is something we call convergence. The convergence is on-demand workers and full-time employees starting to look like each other. And, I called the book The End of Jobs, Rise of On-Demand Workers and Agile Corporations. And people thought, oh, does that mean you think all employees are going to be Uber drivers? No, that's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. But the tensions that the on-demand worker faces, data-driven HR, right? On the work market platform, which manages billions of dollars in spend of freelance workers, we're capturing 127 unique data points. So Kierty, to your point about feedback, there's not an annual review. There is a constant stream of data on how that person, that worker performs. We have personal responsibility, right? They are shifting away from the company safety net more to their own safety net. That's got a huge history and series of implications. But, it used to be as a company or as a worker, I knew my company was going to train me and develop me. And now more of that falls on me. And what does that mean? And what's the opportunity set there? There is more task-based work. Again, that freelancer is a task-based worker, and we're seeing more of that. Maggie, to our point earlier on the atomization of work, of task-based work permeating full-time employment. And the freelancer faces an algorithm allocating the work based on the data, based on the task. We're increasingly seeing that as a full-time employee. So in terms of the trends for employees, you're starting to see this convergence, and that has a ton of implications. But the near-term trend is really around this acute labor shortage and how long it lasts. Because traditionally, the supply and demand imbalance will favor companies, and what helps workers are the social safety net, unions, and regulation. And so there are a lot of things that we can talk about within that, but I will yield the floor because I could go on for like an hour just on those three counterbalancing forces and how they've trended over time.
I was going to say, I don't know about a union for marketers. That would be news for me.
Well, it's interesting because people always say, oh, well, the freelancers, will they organize? And I was giving a talk the other day and somebody said, well, how come freelancers don't organize? And I said, well, they're so different, right? An Uber driver and a marketing freelancer and all these other things. Yet the union movement in the United States has less than 7% of the labor force, but carries a tremendous amount of political weight. Whereas the freelance workers in California, when they finally had the legislature pass a law that made them more likely to be classified as employees of Uber and Lyft and DoorDash and Postmates, the ballot initiative, they got crushed in Prop 22, where basically the question was, do you want workers to have the rights? I'm going to make a very glib interpretation, so my apologies. Do you want workers to have their rights and be treated like employees? Or do you want to wait another 3 minutes and pay $5 more for your Uber ride? And the people of California overwhelmingly said, I don't want to wait for an Uber. So you guys are freelancers. Let's go. I got to go places. Yeah. So the power of freelancers in this to drive change is limited, but the power of regulation writ large and the union movement and how the union movement's evolving into like the Fight for 15 are certainly very powerful trends helping the employees.
No, I do agree with that. I would say my at least exposure and experience is with marketing freelancers, right? And I feel like they they feel a little empowered at the moment, I think, so that they can keep their options open. Given the, the quote, great resignation of 2020 to 2021 that's occurring, I am actually surprised at how many freelancers, though, and I'm speaking in terms of my exposure to ones that we might use or friends in the community, they're actually looking for full-time work. They kind of were like, oh, aren't you going to offer me a full-time job now? I've been freelancing for you the last year or two, and you bringing me into projects here and there. And so I'm seeing that shift. So there's a lot more empowerment there, and it's probably because there's opportunities. But from a flexible schedule standpoint, I think, the reality is we don't save lives for the most part in marketing. We're not medical workers. We're not moving that door onto like the car frame, like we're not doing we don't actually need to be physical, truly, if we don't need to be. And I do think that's certainly empowered our function, right? To say, I'm interested in this, but I want to be remote, and I want to be remote from anywhere. And you have to kind of go through the hiring process. I think the real solid review of like the recommendations and referrals, and figure out like, am I going to trust this person to come on and actually probably be remote, unless I bring people together on an offsite or something like that that's physical, and be sure that they're going to get their work done, right? And I think there's an element of trust that we have to provide and give and accept in this new kind of world of relationships that we're forming, and they're all being forged in a virtual format. My team, for instance, is on a flexible schedule. They can go in a couple days a week into the office if they'd like, and in some instances, if they're not near an office, they are fully remote. And what I have grown to learn in my short tenure here with my team is they are phenomenal. They have gotten work done above and beyond. If anything, I had to start thinking about them turning off their laptops, please, at a certain time, because it started becoming bad habit where we're all just on our computer constantly. Our home is turned into our office is our home. And I think that's going to be the new challenge as we go into 2022 is, even if we stay on like a flexible remote schedule, how do we create that partition between what's home and what's office? I think it's really important for mental health, and ensuring that people are motivated and excited and still want to get their work done. There are some companies, I'm not going to mention which public entities have done this, but in just the last few months, there are companies that have actually instituted Friday at noon. Their company closes every Friday moving forward, because they found that their employees were working too long on the computer Monday through Thursday, that it was just like burnout, like complete mental burnout, right? So
Yeah.
they're like shutting their offices down starting at noon. And I want to see, Jeff, in your subsequent like insights and research as you continue to do what you do and your expertise, is that going to be a new trend? Because I know there are quite a few countries that will have like instituted like 4-day work weeks, or in certain sectors. Is that going to be the new place we go? Since I know I'm on the computer 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, and then Fridays are the only day I'm like 5 o'clock, please God, I need to be off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I am curious how that's going to maybe be a new trend that's beneficial to employees.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it'll be interesting to see, because I think for some people, working remote has always been part of their career, and they over time have figured out how to put those boundaries up and where to draw the lines. But for an entire workforce, this is new, right? And they are still trying to figure that out along with their leaders and their team and people maybe that they've never met before, right? So they're trying to build that trust in those relationships at the same time figuring out this new way of working.